Today I held a meeting on consultation on the issue of forced marriages. What we wanted to find out was what were the views of women's organizations, people in the community activists, local politicians, as to what their view was on the forthcoming legislation of forced marriages. What we've done is started the first phase of this issue by getting the views, which will come back to us, and I will then feed them to the Shadow Home Office and to the Home Office to put the views across to the community of how to proceed with this legislation.
Some of the young people that we have interacted with have been really clear that they want a strong message sent. They want a strong message sent that this isn't okay. They want a strong message sent to parents. They want a strong message to the community. But those very same young people, when we ask them about that message, are really clear that for them, this legislation wouldn't work because they would be terrified of criminalising their parents.
I agree with what both the previous speakers have said. We have already sufficient criminal laws to cover any kind of activities, whether it is pressures or coercions or assaults or mutilation or whatever is happening. Those laws, those procedures exist. There is no need for this criminalisation of forced marriages, this concept. I mean, the first thing is how do you start defining you and what's a forced marriage? Because everybody I know makes a big distinction. There is a distinction between arranged marriage and a forced marriage, and there's one with choice and agreement, and then there are some cases where what you call forced marriages happen, but actually it's not as big a thing as I think sometimes perhaps the media are making it out to be. It is a problem, but it is still very much confined to a smaller number of cases, and I think just for some cases to try to make, and to me it looks like a populist stance to say, well, we must, criminalise forced marriages. It's like as the government seems to be sounding tough.
I think one of the first things I want to flag up is it's interesting for me, and it makes me raise my eyebrows and questions about what is the agenda behind criminalising forced marriage, other than it being a populist move without necessarily being a serious attempt to redress the issue. Because whilst there's a lot of noise about forced marriage and the need to protect, that protection principle never extends to the asylum process. And young women in particular and other vulnerable people who are escaping forced marriage and other forms of gender-based violence, but who are told that they can seek state protection in their countries when evidence suggests that that's not the case. So there's the first problem I have with the whole agenda on forced marriage.
Obviously the government, it's almost like a knee-jerk reaction. The coalition government always complained about Labour creating too many laws, over 3,000, constantly. And as a consequence, the coalition government has fallen into that same trap. Now, I mean, there is need for reflection here, which is that just because you create law doesn't necessarily mean you're going to solve the problem. So dealing with the root cause is absolutely essential. And if I may draw your attention to the Home Affairs Select Committee report of 2011, they based their research on two pieces of evidence, which was overwhelmingly suggesting that this is a huge problem, we've got to legislate. And many of us were calling for a robust methodological approach to speaking to activists in the sector, speaking to victims and hearing their voices, and found that on balance 64% of the respondents out of a sample of 74 across the UK, England and Wales, said that they were not in favour of standalone legislation, and on balance felt it was important to refer to existing legislation, and as my colleagues have referred to that.
I was 16 years old when I was taken by a close family member to Pakistan under the pretense of a family holiday. It was only when I arrived in Pakistan that I was informed that I would be marrying my first cousin. He was 15 years my senior, a man that I had never met or had ever seen a picture of even. I tried everything possible within my power to prevent this marriage from taking place, even agreeing to an engagement if that was going to placate them. But to no avail. I was told clearly I had no choice in the matter. I didn't have access to a phone, I didn't have any money, and I didn't have my passport or anyone that I could speak to that could support me in this issue. I returned to the UK some months later, a married young woman at 16. Although I persisted that I didn't wish to remain in the marriage, nor did I wish to maintain any contact with this man via telephone calls or letter, my pleas appeared to fall on deaf ears. The overriding message that I was being force-fed was that I needed to maintain the so-called family honour at any cost, even if it meant staying with a man that I didn't wish to be with. As the pressure mounted to comply, I felt I had no other choice but to leave home. Not even those with the authority to protect me could do so. My family went to great lengths to locate me, hiring a private detective, a bounty hunter, as well as bombarding the police community liaison officer with calls for my safe return home.
Forced marriage is against religions, whatever religion you might believe in. It's morally wrong, it's legally wrong. Even if there is one case, it's one too many. That is the belief that I have, and I'm speaking as a brother of 4 sisters and father of 3 daughters. This practice needs to be challenged. Many years ago, that is more or less the custom that the people who come from villages in Pakistan or in many parts of Bangladesh as well, that is what the practice was in villages at the time when I was brought up, all my brothers and sisters. Nobody asked us, would you like to marry this girl? Or neither of my sisters were asked, will you marry this man? It was all customary. As it happens, it all worked well. All of us are living happy lives. We've got grown-up children. Despite the fact that some of us grew up in this country and were taken back and got married. But what has changed, and this is where education comes in. I think the best solution to all this is education. That things have changed, the cultures have changed. World has moved on. Even in Pakistan, this practice is dying. And in this country, too, if I may say so, that this isn't a growing problem, if anything, it's a decreasing problem. And I know that for a fact. And it needs to be challenged, not only by campaign groups, but also community leaders, religious leaders, and political leaders. We do understand there is an issue, and we cannot put it under the carpet. And therefore, what I am saying, that there needs to be, the laws needs to be tougher, but there needs to be proper consultation with those people who have the experience, like yourselves, the solicitors who deal with them day in, day out, and the politicians who do get casework and they know that what kind of cases there are and what is going to work and what is not going to work. And listening to the debate today, I came here with an open mind. Listening to the debate here tonight, I am also getting convinced, although my party is part of the government, I'm from the Liberal Democrats, I'm also beginning to think, is this going to work? Is this the best way forward? Is this going to resolve problems? We need a more thoroughly discussion on that. And unless we all think that it's going to be beneficial, we do that. And I will say that perhaps we will need to have more education. We need to spend more money on education than actually creating more criminal acts to, trying to criminalize people. And I think it's a fair point where perhaps many young people may not come forward to report if they clearly see that their parents are going to be affected by that, or they're going to be sent behind the bars.
I really totally agree that we need education, we need awareness, and the targeted areas which we have to make community centers which women can come and discuss their problems. We can discuss all evening and all day on the forced marriages, but we need the reasons why forced marriages are there. And forced marriages are because it's not for one community, it's not for one country, it's not for one religion. I think it's for many countries and for many communities and for many religions. They're suffering with the forced marriages. For this one, if we are thinking, I believe this is the part of extremism, because you can't force any individual to go into any relationship without their consent. And as a Muslim, Islam, they don't teach us in extremism, and they don't say that you have to go into the relationship without the consent. And if it's a forced marriage, obviously if the girl or the boy, even the boys, they are coming to forced marriages, not even a girl or anything. So I think if they are forced into marriages, there is no nikah. And if there is no nikah, the relationship or the marriage is haram. So totally it's a different thing, because a person is not agree, there is no consent, so how can you put any person, individual, into the relationship? So I think this is haram, and there is no nikah, and it's totally haram in Islam.
What do we do then? Because we don't want another 20, 30 years discussing the same issue. We want resolve. We want this matter dealt with. And we want equality and fairness and justice for everybody, whichever community they come in, however old they are, whether they are in communities or families or whatever. We want fairness for everybody. So what do we do? I love the idea about, yes, it is about education. Of course it's about education. How is it that many of the families and people in the countries that we've come from, Pakistan in our case, India, other Bangladesh, they seem to have actually progressed a bit further on some of these issues than we have here. Maybe it's because we are insecure and our families are so afraid to lose their roots that they do some of these things. Whatever, we need information and education and support for our families. And that support isn't just through the school system, although we need to make sure teachers do not dismiss those girls who've suddenly disappeared or young boys who've disappeared, that they actually follow them up and do something about it. It is education. However, it is also down to the facilities we have in our communities. All those community centres which have been, because the finance is no longer there. The women's groups that have disappeared because the finances are no longer there. The local authority support networks that are no longer there because the finances aren't there. It is a whole thing that we need to discuss. It's not just one. And somebody said joined up thinking. Oh my God, yes. We can't do it it can't be just legislation. It has to be top down, bottom up. So every single department needs to be talking to each other: education, social services, housing, community groups, voluntary groups, and all the people who are there to support our people in our community need to work together, talk to each other, and actually get to grips with this very important issue.
So I think we've got to be very careful and categorical in our resistance, but at the same time, we've got to make sure that we don't sound fanatics, because that's exactly what they will make us look out to be. And I'm really pleased for the first time, maybe we can be very, very strong collectively. And South of Black Sisters and Imkans and Aisha and her groups, they've been well known for these kind of sort of campaigns. And maybe we need to be on the streets, and that's what we need to do, but we have to do them. Thank you very much.
Fair enough. Thank you very much as always.
My name is Zabi Nassar and I'm from Solihull, and nobody's raised the point that if the government does criminalise forced marriages, then the other side of the coin is that these young girls can be sent back to Pakistan and relocated there and actually forced to live their lives out there so that they can comply with their customs and their traditions. And then you are in effect jeopardizing their futures by criminalizing this law.
I actually don't think the police have the resources. And at the moment, even with domestic violence cases, the response is inconsistent. It is completely inconsistent. You can get a brilliant response from an officer, but you can also get a very indifferent and frankly negligent response from another officer. So in that kind of situation, enforcement procedures are so inconsistent and patchy that we need to actually be looking at monitoring more enforcement, and that's across the board. Finally, the data issue. I think there is a real problem about having a serious debate when one doesn't even know the extent of the problem. There is a serious problem. I do accept that perhaps there is exaggeration going on. Certainly in the media there is. In the media there is certainly exaggeration. So if the government's serious, the first thing we need to do is have proper statistics. Let's have serious, comprehensive statistics of the extent of the problem, because then we can deal with it.
आज जो इवेंट यहाँ पर हमने ऑर्गेनाइज किया है फॉर द फोर्स मैरिज यूनिट, ये फोर्स मैरिज कोई नया कोई टॉपिक नहीं है, ना कोई नई बात है, लेकिन ये है कि लोगों में अवेयरनेस आ गई है कि अब फोर्स मैरिज क्या है, फोर्स मैरिज और अरेंज मैरिज में फ़र्क क्या है। लेकिन मेरा कंसर्न ये है कि फ़ोर्स मैरिज के रीज़न्स क्या हैं। रीज़न ये है कि हमारे अपनी कम्युनिटी में हमारे जो पेरेंट्स हैं, अब ओल्ड जनरेशन कह लें या न्यू जनरेशन कह लें, इनमें इनसिक्योरिटी ज़्यादा हो गई हैं। इनकी इनसिक्योरिटीज़ के लिए मैं सिर्फ ये बोलना चाहूँगी कि उनको अपनी ब्रॉटअप पे एतबार होना चाहिए कि उन्होंने ब्रॉटअप किस तरह किया है। उसमें इनसिक्योरिटीज़ का होना ज़रूरी नहीं है, लेकिन खुदा के लिए उसको छोड़ दें कि वो अपने जो रिश्तेदार हैं, मामू के बेटे, चचा के बेटे, बेटियां, इवन बेटियां भी, उनको यहाँ लाने की खातिर अपने बच्चों को कुर्बान ना करें। बच्चों के लिए हम छोटी छोटी बातों के लिए हम बच्चों को खुशियों के लिए हम पीछे पीछे भागते हैं, और जब इतना बड़ा फ़ैसला ज़िंदगी का आता है उस वक्त हम बच्चों को छोड़ देते हैं, उनके ऊपर वो रिलेशनशिप जो है थोप देते हैं जिसके वो हकदार नहीं है। तो खुदा के लिए इस चीज़ को छोड़ें, इसके रीज़न्स जो हैं उसको कवर अप करना शुरू करें, तो इंशाल्लाह होपफुली कम हो जाएंगे, ख़त्म नहीं होंगे लेकिन इसमें कम ज़रूर हो जाएंगे। थैंक यू।